Hello everyone, as we await new Tekken 8 character announcements, let us return to some we have not yet gone over. With that, welcome to our Kazuya primer. Kazuya represents a classic Mishima style revolving around a simple stance mix-up via his crouch dash, from which he also has the notorious electric wind godfist that will serve both as a fantastic punisher and pressure tool. That said, he's fairly simple but is very execution heavy if you want to get really scary, so be prepared for that. As with our other primers, this video should give you a good quick rundown on the character to jumpstart your learning and get you playing some matches. We will keep the technical lingo to a minimum, but you should still have some knowledge on basic standardized Tekken terms, especially notations and terms for various game mechanics. In other words, this guide is meant for beginners, but you should already know a little bit about the game, just not necessarily the character. If you are brand new to Tekken, check out the resource links in the video description below. I've included several, including a system basics guide that operates as a tutorial for the whole game, since Tekken doesn't really have that built in. To me, I think it's incredibly important to go over that before trying to tackle character-specific guides. But enough of all that, let's begin. Again, Kazuya is a pretty straightforward character, and we have two good starting points for that. The first is actually how he's a bit odd. He has a normal jab and even a generic toe kick, but he's missing other standard tools. For instance, he's lacking a safe quick mid punch, such as a down forward one. His down forward one is certainly a safe mid, but it's a somewhat slower, chunkier style of move. His pseudo alternative to the traditional down forward one is actually his down forward 4. Another thing is a lack of really scary panic tools. He has no hop kick, he doesn't have a reversal unless you count his forward 2 armor move, which gives kind of lackluster reward. And outside of a couple minor crush tools like down back 3, he doesn't have those scary crush moves. Instead, you have to focus on tight defense, which of course we'll get to later, solid spacing, and pressure to keep people away. Thus enter now his crouch dash, or CD. The classic Mishima CD is forward, neutral, down, down, forward. You can loop this, which is called a wave dash. It's an excellent way to close space, but anytime you pop out of CD, it puts you standing, so it quickly gives you access to really any tool you may want. So what tools do you have? Well, in CD, the big ones are CD2 and CD4. CD2 is of course the infamous electric wind godfist, which is a very quick launcher that gives significant advantage on block. A few things to note about this move. First, although it is a high, it recovers incredibly quick, so to duck and punish it, your opponent will have to anticipate it. It's almost impossible to duck punish this on reaction to any great extent. Second, it can be stepped to his right, but simply vary your timing and movement to realign yourself, so it will still catch steppers far more than it probably should. Third, there is a non-electric version, and because of the input overall, this move is where a lot of your execution will be focused. The non-electric version isn't the worst thing in the world, but you definitely want the electric version, which is largely determined by how quickly together you do the down, forward, and 2. Which, speaking of, it should be noted that unlike the other Mishimas, Kazuya can do his as forward, neutral, down, forward 2, so he can cut out the down input entirely, making his slightly faster. There is more nuance to CD2, but that covers the most important aspects. It's a tool you'll be abusing a lot. The other big CD tool is your main low threat, CD4. You have 2 follow-ups, the mid one being the most common, but either way, it's a knockdown low for sizable damage that puts your opponent in a situation where they might have to defend against it again immediately after getting up. This is Kazuya's well-known vortex. Now obviously CD2 is a high, so you have to use some other things for your mid options. Forward forward 3 is one of the most common. It's a safe mid launcher, and since doing a crouch dash buffers a forward input for you, you can do it as simply CD forward 3. If you need some quicker options, doing forward, neutral, quarter circle forward 4 will give you your while standing 4, which is a safe mid poke. Doing the same with 3 gives you your while standing 3, which is a safe knockdown homing mid. And through a cancel technique, which does take some practice, doing crouch dash, neutral back neutral, and then pressing either 1 or 2 will give you while standing 1 or while standing 2 respectively. That sequence of crouch dash, neutral back neutral does have to be quick, but while standing 1-2 is an extremely powerful, quick mid launcher that isn't too risky for what it is. And this all represents the core of what you'll be doing with Kazuya, but you do also have some non-CD moves that are important that you can do as part of your CD game or just as normal neutral tools. Down back 4 is a big one. It's a very low risk, chunky load that also hits grounded and gives considerable advantage on hit. Similarly, forward 4 is a great pressure ultra mid, the range can be a bit iffy, so it's actually a good idea to do this out of CD to mitigate that. You also have a handful of strong poke strings like 3-1, down forward 3-2, back 2-4, and of course the down forward 1 string, all of which can end with risky but high reward mids. You can also just use some plain old chunky mids like down back 2, forward 4, or running 3. Regardless, Kaz is not complicated. The hardest thing to do or understand is the repetitive CDs and consistent electrics. We already mentioned, of course, Kaz's lack of panic tools, but that doesn't mean he's without defense. Electric is, of course, your main keep out threat to keep people honest and spaced out. However, you have some counter hit tools beyond that. The scariest is probably down forward 2, which is a powerful mid homing attack that launches on counter hit. It's also another execution opportunity because although you can do a basic combo from it, if you do a perfectly timed electric, it gives you a full launch for absurd damage. It's incredibly quick as well, so you can use it as both a counter hit tool and an anti-step tool. It's not unsafe, but it's very low risk for everything it does. If you want a homing move that is safe, keep back 4 in mind. It's high, but also very quick and also launches on counter hit. Forward 3 is another great keep out tool as well, this time far more range than the others we've mentioned. But if your opponent gets in on you, Kaz's block and whiff punishment is probably the best in the game. Your jab punisher is fantastic with 1-1-2, one of the few jab punishers that knocks down. This will be your go-to for most situations because it's very easy to confirm that 1-1 hits before finishing it, which makes it far safer. If you need something more powerful or a splatter, only slightly slower than 1-1-2 are 2-2, back 1-2, and 1+2. After that, believe it or not, you can start using your electric to launch punish. Just remember your timing has to be tight for that, which is again that execution element. Crouch is a bit simpler. You have while standing 4-4 as your quickest option, but like 1-1-2, it's extremely powerful. Then only slightly slower is while standing 1-2, so he starts launching from crouch at 13 frames, which few characters can do. And that's it. Throw some side steps in there, but otherwise pretty simple defense, just hard to execute at times, so get comfortable with spending lots of time in practice mode. We're going to mostly skip over juggles, of course, although check out the video description for a link to some sample combos. The one thing I guess to keep in mind is that your juggle options get a lot better once you can do the harder juggles that require electrics. Otherwise, the only thing worth mentioning is his rage. He does have a rage drive, which is a beefed up version of his CD1. However, he can also use his rage to transform into devil. If the rage drive hits, you can also go into devil that way, but if they just block it, you lose that opportunity. Regardless, a few key moves change when you're in devil. Of them, the ones to really pay attention to are forward 1+2, which changes from a wall bouncer to a safe mid launcher, down forward 1-2, which gives him a standing version of his twin pistons, his CD4, which gains a third hit and thus more damage, and the big one, his electric, becomes mid. So a lot of strong changes. Also worth noting that he loses his forward 2 long range punisher in exchange for an unsafe mid hit throw attack. Still, it's normally worth it to transform to devil since those changes are kind of insane. This brings us to the end of the primer. I'm hoping this information was succinct and helpful for getting a jump on the character, but feedback is always welcome. Be mindful that in-depth discussion for game plans and move attributes will be saved for intermediate guides, although since we have the more robust basics guides already for Tekken 7, true intermediate guides will be something to look out for with Tekken 8. Lastly, big thanks to our patrons. You guys are the best and that support means more than you know. But to everyone, stay safe and we'll see you next time.